Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine, that we may be saved. Amen. Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine, that we might be saved. Our psalm this morning, it brings me back to a hot summer in North Carolina. A hot summer standing on Miss Betty's porch. I was working for Carolina Cross Connection, a summer home repair ministry that runs summer mission trips, similar to the trips that our youth take to ASP. I was standing on Miss Betty's porch when she said to me, is there any of this wood that can be saved? I was about to oversee a project to rebuild Miss Betty's wheelchair ramp. Most of the ramp was falling apart, and Miss Betty knew it. I told her I wasn't really sure, that the wood, from just taking a look at it, looked like it wasn't going to work. And tears began to well up in her eyes. She told me if there were any pieces, if there was even just one piece that was good enough for us to use, she would love for us to use it. She shared with me that 10 years prior to this moment, her husband had built this ramp as both of their mobility began to decline. And that just a few months before Miss Betty and I met, her husband had passed. This wood was important. This wood was important to use if there was anything left in it. So as the team began ripping up the old ramp, we took our time. We took our time to see if there was any wood that we could salvage. And we got to this middle section. The rest of the wood had been a mess. We got to the middle section. And the support beams underneath, for some reason, in this middle section, looked like they were brand new. I said to Miss Betty, is this the original? Had you repaired this section before? And she said, no. That's what my husband laid. That wood was good. And so as a team, we removed nail after nail and screw after screw in this section. We began redrawing the building plans to accommodate this wood at these measurements. We were going to use these old pieces in the building of what was new. Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine so that we might be saved. Our psalm this morning, the writer is looking around, and there is destruction and chaos. The northern and southern kingdoms are at war with one another. Israel in the north has just lost Samaria, its capital, its place of power and decision-making authority, the place that they were familiar with. Their Washington, D.C. has just been captured. And the psalmist believes that more destruction is coming their way. The psalmist doesn't know what exactly will happen next, but they don't anticipate it being good. And the psalmist is honest with God about this destruction, about this uncertainty. And yet, the psalmist speaks to the ways that God has been faithful in the past and the ways that they believe God will be faithful again. This psalm is a true psalm of Advent. This psalm repeats this phrase 4 times in this one chapter. And 3 times this morning, you all said these words. Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine, that we might be saved. Restore us. The psalmist is not asking God to create something all new, but to restore them, to bring them back, to help them return. The psalmist is asking God to help them find what was once there, to allow God's face to shine and to allow the people to return back to this way of living. this way of loving God and loving one another. In the midst of all of the difficulties, in the midst of all that seems impossible, the Israelites have lost sight of God. But the psalmist is speaking a different truth. And the psalmist knows that this truth of restoration is not easy. Just as it would have been easier to tear down Miss Betty's ramp and just build her a new one, restoration requires time and dedication and deep intention to find the good of the old and use it with the good of the new. And the psalmist knows that this work of restoration is not just theirs, but it is the work of God. It's not something that we can do on our own, but it is work that we participate in. Sometimes I am amazed at the way that God chooses us for this work. I think, who am I that God would use me? What do I have to offer? Luckily, thanks to the scripture, I know that I am not alone in these thoughts. In Paul's letter to the Romans, he echoes the words of the Psalms. But to the Romans, he speaks words of affirmation to the Romans who are unsure of their identity, unsure of their possibilities. Paul reminds them that their identity is in Christ. Thanks to Christ, they have received God's grace, or as one of our youth likes to say, God's good vibes. Through God's grace, God is choosing to use them for the work of restoration. But friends, this work of restoration requires a deep look inside ourselves. A look inside to say, are we living into this calling to be saints, as Paul wrote, or have we strayed from our purpose? Are we caring for one another, or are we too busy to even see those in need? Are we living into our belovedness? Do we believe that there is anything in us left to restore? Do we believe there is something to save? Or have we given up? At this point, you may be wondering, Chelsea, what does this have to do with Christmas? Do you realize that Advent is here, that Christmas is just a few days away? Friends, this story of restoration is not just in our Psalms and in our letters from Paul, but it is intertwined. It is a crucial part of the gospel. Restoration is part of the birth narrative. In the birth of Jesus, God continues to restore humanity. God comes to us in the flesh to be with us. And even before the birth of Jesus, God is restoring. This morning we heard the story of Joseph and about how he was thinking of dismissing Mary, to do so quietly so neither of them would receive a public shaming. He thought getting rid of what had been and starting anew was best for both of them. And yet the angel of the Lord comes to him and says, wait, stop, take Mary as your wife. There is more to this story. God made sure that Joseph knew that. Restore us, O God of hosts. Let your face shine that we might be saved. The psalmist is begging God to hear their prayers. Even after all of the chaos and destruction, all of the uncertainty, the psalmist, Paul, and Joseph this morning are reminding us that God will act, that God will shine God's face, and that the people will be saved. This restoring love of God, this love that seeks us out, that says that we are worth restoring is the love that we celebrate today on our final Sunday of Advent. We celebrate that God is not done with us, that there is more of our story still to share. We celebrate that even in the moments when we cannot see the next steps, that God is restoring us to right relationship with God and with one another. So my prayer for you, for me, for us this day, is that we would allow ourselves to be open to this work. That we would not just throw out the entire wheelchair ring, but that we would search through the pieces to find the ones that are good, and that we would use them. That we would look within ourselves and within this community to see the gifts, the graces, and to turn back, realizing that we have always had everything that we need. To return back to our calling as God's beloved, trusting in the grace that is being poured out. My prayer is that in our returning, we would experience God in new ways this Christmas season. That in our returning to right relationship, we would experience Jesus anew. That we would be transformed, and we would allow God's face to shine so that we would be saved. Restore us, O God. Let your face shine, that we may